It makes me dance, but it also makes me want to jump off of a... You're just listening, you're vibing. No, you're coping. Okay, that's where I was like literally just a few weeks ago. And it was getting pretty bad. I was listening to music all day. I'd be like walking in between my classes. I have my AirPods on, I'm listening to music. A lot of times I'm like showering and I have my phone there and I'm listening to music. It got pretty bad. And I had this kind of change in perspective not too long ago where I started viewing music as a substance as opposed to, just entertainment or just like background noise. And that change was really valuable. I'm much more peaceful now. I have kind of more control of myself. I'm more emotionally in touch with myself. So it's a great shift. That's what I wanted to talk about today, where the starting bit where I started abusing music as a substance, the change in perspective that I had, how I find like music as a pretty annoying substance as well. And then ultimately what perspective I have now, where I still listen to music actually. Just the way I view it is a little bit different. I think I started listening to music a lot more last year during the summer. That was like the initial exposure, if we want to use like psychiatry terminology, where the Kendrick and Drake beef started happening. So it was a fun excuse to listen to music, and honestly, that was fun. Got to see all the drama. You get to be part of it. That wasn't the problem. The problem came when I started using it too much, and I wasn't just having fun. I was listening to all day, and I was using it more than as you would with just music. I remember a lot of times I'd be feeling tired or loneliness quite a bit. And instead of just feeling that emotion, as soon as I felt lonely or as soon as I felt angry, I'd just throw my AirPods and start listening to music. That was pretty bad. Even like exhaustion's a good example, where I was in SF over the summer. I'd be coming home, I'd be taking the BART, and I'd be exhausted, which is completely fine. But soon as I felt tired or exhausted, I'd throw in my AirPods, start listening to music. And the issue there was I'd get home and then I just feel kind of lazy. I feel like a bum. And, I'm supposed to cook, which I had planned. I don't cook. I start eating like junk food or whatever. And I start like binging YouTube, and kind of there goes my evening, right? That's not fun at all. Ideally, you in that scenario, you feel tired. Maybe you like take a nap or you take a break for 10 minutes, process that emotion, and then you come home not having used music as a coping substance or coping mechanism. And instead, now you're kind of like refreshed because you process that emotion. So now you can cook and eat some healthy food, and you get 2 hours of your time back to do whatever work that you were doing. That would be ideal. Actually, it got pretty bad just a few weeks ago. I'm thinking about it. Honestly, like a month ago, when I'm waking up, genuinely in the first like 3 seconds, I start having music play in my head. Right, my eyes open, my alarm rings, eyes open. I close the alarm. The first thing that pops in my head is music, which is just terrible. Like that pisses me off. That's actually terrible because it's the morning. You're trying to be fresh, right? It's a nice start to the day. I want to hear birds chirping. I want to see like the bright blue sky, and I want to get a nice like day started. I want to have some breakfast. Instead, like Selena Gomez is stuck in my head. That's just terrible. Like it takes away freedom from you, right? So that is pissing me off, and that's where I started kind of trying to make a shift and recognize music as a substance, which wasn't too difficult to do because I enjoy studying addiction psychiatry, so that kind of I was able to apply that perspective pretty easily. So that was nice. And so I started kind of shifting things, shifting the way I treat music. The thing though is music's kind of like an annoying substance, because it's similar to alcohol, where it's like it's so fundamentally entrenched in society that if you have no relationship with it, if music is just music, then it's like not a problem, right? But if you're using it as a coping mechanism, then it's just torture because it's literally everywhere, right? You can't escape it. I go to the gym, there's music playing. I'm trying to eat, there's music playing. I'm in class, there's music playing. I'm like trying to go to the washroom and there's music. Like I'm just trying to pee, bro. Like I don't need to listen to music. Let me just pee in peace. You know what I mean? There's an instance I remember which really like got on my nerves. This was a couple months ago. I was on a flight. It was 11 p.m. I was trying to sleep, right? Get a nice little nap on my overnight flight. And the guy in the row in front of me was singing Too Sweet. I think that's the title. Hosier, I don't know how you say his name. Great song, but the guy was singing it 11 p.m. and he probably sang it for 30 seconds, right? Let me give him the benefit of the doubt. But that got stuck in my head, and it got stuck in my head for the entire flight, and it was just terrible. It was just ringing. I'm just trying to sleep, man. I don't need you to influence me, right? It's kind of this perspective where it takes away freedom from you because it controls you. Maybe it's a skill issue. Maybe I shouldn't have been influenced by him or whatever. But I don't like that kind of influence where it's out of your control. That really annoys me, especially when you're treating it improperly or unhealthy way as a coping mechanism. But anyway, I kind of changed that perspective where I started viewing it as a substance, not just like a fun thing that you listen to, and that brought about a big shift. A great example, um, where we were talking about, I was talking about feeling lonely and angry. The shift I made was now, anytime I felt lonely, for example, I would kind of my instinct would be just to put on my AirPods, start listening, and that's where I kind of took a step back and I said, I would think to myself, okay, I want to listen to music, and you can insert any substance there, right? Like you're feeling lonely, so you default to drinking alcohol. You want to go vape or whatever, right? Um, so my instinct would be to put on my AirPods. I would stop that and I would be like, okay, Marmik, how are you feeling? I'm feeling lonely. It makes a lot of sense because you haven't seen any friends today. You haven't hung out with anyone. It's a lonely day, and that sucks. I'm sorry that you're feeling that way. Um, it's a valid emotion. I'm sorry that you have to feel lonely. Hope it gets better. And that was just like what, 2 sentences, but there's a lot to like. There's a lot of valuable stuff to unpack there. I recognize the emotion, which helps process it. I validated it. Your emotions are always valid, right? You validated it, and then your actions don't need to be valid, but your emotions are always valid, right? And then I was self-compassionate. I was kind to myself. I was saying, "Hey, it's okay to be lonely. That sucks. I'm sorry you're feeling that way." And you do that, and like 2 minutes later, that urge to listen to music or drink alcohol, whatever, that just goes away. And so I started like being in touch with my emotions more, where I just try to stop, recognize whatever emotion I'm feeling, recognize that I'm using music as a coping mechanism to kind of suppress that emotion, instead just feel that emotion itself. So that was really healthy. Other piece where kind of the perspective of music is a drug was valuable was when it came to avoidance. So you can think something like, if you have like someone who's dealing with alcohol, some substance abuse problems, good strategy, maybe not as an end goal, but intermediary, a good strategy would be to avoid like common triggers. So maybe they don't keep alcohol in their house. They try to keep that distance. They try to avoid going to bars. They try to not talk to friends that uh, lead them to drinking often, right? I kind of did the same thing when it came to music, where I don't have Spotify. I don't have like YouTube Music. I think it's called YouTube Music. I don't have Apple Music, and it's funny enough. I have a Google Doc where I like physically write out each song I want to keep track of. If it's like a fun song I want to listen to again, and if I want to listen to something, I go on YouTube and manually type it out and click on like the video and I watch that. And so that's just sounds annoying, right? And that's kind of the point. I'm adding additional friction to make the access to that drug or substance or whatever harder. I'm not getting rid of music. I'm more than happy to listen to music, just making it a little bit harder. So I actually do the same thing with my phone, where if I'm working or studying, I'll put my phone in my bag and put my bag like across the table. And the benefit there is, if I need to access my phone, it's still there. But this kind of instinct where maybe I feel stress from the work that I'm doing and immediately go on my phone and start scrolling TikTok or Reels or whatever, that goes away because I have to like physically get up and go. And at that point, that's enough friction for my like frontal cortex to engage and say, "Hey, Marmik, you're actually stressed. Process your stress instead of coping with YouTube or whatever," right? So that avoidance has also been really helpful, where that kind of perspective comes in, where this is substance. you can place that kind of level of avoidance. So all these things have been really valuable. I find that I mean, this is something I'm still working on, being more healthy when it comes to dealing with substances. And of course, music is like not that bad, right? When you're comparing it to like nicotine or alcohol or sex or whatever. But it's, recognizing it from this perspective is still valuable. It's given me more peace, right? The example of waking up in the mornings with like Selena Gomez playing in my head, that's gone away for the most part. That's been helpful. Um, and I've been able to kind of take things to the root cause of being more emotionally aware and processing the emotions. So that's been valuable. That said, though, funny enough, I still use music as a substance. But the asterisk here is using music as a substance with awareness and intentionality, whereas before I was doing it without those two things. So I'll give you a good example. A couple times a week, I'll wake up late, right? Let's say I want to wake up at 6. I sleep late. I wake up at like 10. And the issue is when I wake up late like that, I just feel kind of like a bum, and I have all these urges. I have an urge to stay in bed, to consume social media. Usually, I'll like start binging YouTube, and then eat junk food. Right, not like a proper breakfast, not cooking lunch, just eat junk food, and that kind of just ruins the day. I really don't like when I do that, and it happens quite often. Now, what I started doing since I recognize music as a substance is actually employing it. Is employing the right word? Using it in that late morning wake up situation where I wake up and I say, okay, I have an urge to eat junk food, to lay in bed and consume social media. How about we still, because ideally you don't do anything, you just get up and you're like David Goggins and you go on your 10-mile run. But like that's perfectionism is a utopia, right? But we want to make these incremental steps that are progressive. And so if this is like David Goggins, this is where I'm at with binging YouTube. A nice intermediary is still using a substance, but using a healthier substance. And so what I do nowadays is actually intentionally use music as a substance. So I'll wake up, I'll throw some music in the background as I get ready in the morning. And maybe I'll have like some chocolate or like extra sugar in my coffee, once again, as a substance, as food as a substance, right? Or sugar. I'll like take things a little bit slowly, have a relaxed morning. And so is this ideal? No, but it is having a bite of chocolate and then listen to music is much healthier than like binging YouTube and eating junk food and ruining the day. And so my point is like, it isn't to get rid of music. I still listen to music. I think it's great. It's to recognize that, or kind of employ this perspective of it being a substance, which also doesn't mean you get rid of it. It's just you make sure you don't treat it as a coping mechanism. And I think the key takeaway that I have for myself is that this YAP session isn't actually even about music. It's about addiction psychiatry, using music as a silly, fun medium to talk about it.